Back from the dead once again. I am mining investor and editor of Resource Stock Digest, Gerardo Del Real, here with my partner, Mr. Nick Hodge, who's also an investor and happens to be the publisher of Daily Profit Cycle. This is the 208th episode of our weekly therapy session that we call Investing in Bizarro World. We're going to talk about the markets. We're going to talk about disappearing UFOs and disappearing balloons. We're going to talk PDAC curses, gold, meaningless M&A, Bitcoin, a lot to get to as always. But before we get into that, Mr. Nick Hodge, how are you doing? Thank you for holding it down last week. I was under the weather. I understand that you are a bit under the weather this week again as well.
I think the entire country is a bit under the weather, whether it's head colds or chest colds or COVID still going around or stomach bugs. Everyone I talk to seems to be sick, and there's still no medicine, especially for the kids. If you go to the store, if you can find it, it's $15 or $20 a bottle. And Lord knows I put down some decongestants here over the past couple of days. I haven't been able to breathe through my nose. I've been a mouth breather, as it were. Episode 208, that means we've done this for 4 years. 52 times 4 is 208. How do you feel about that?
Look, it was a good beer. That was the genesis of this podcast, right? For those of you not aware, I was visiting Mr. Hodge and his beautiful family in Washington State. It's a little bit late. We had a few drinks. We were having a locally crafted beer and kind of took 2 minutes and said, hey, you want to start a podcast? He said, yeah. We said, what should we name it? Well, let's call it Bizarro World. Nick had written an article about Bizarro World back in 2015, I believe, 2016, early 2016. And yeah, that was it. The next week we had a podcast, and here we are 4 years later. It's evolved. It's changed. It's grown. I'm proud of it. Look, at the end of the day, we happen to be fortunate enough to be owners, co-owners of our respective businesses, right? And there's a freedom that comes with that. And whenever we're talking stock picks or, writing an editorial or writing a newsletter or doing a podcast, it sure fucking feels good to be able to say what you want to say the things that are true to you. And it doesn't mean everybody has to agree with those things. But it's awesome to have a dialogue that's not filtered and that's not bought for by someone else. And so on that front, I'm proud of it. I'm excited for what comes next. I think it's been, look, I missed it last week. For those of you not aware, I'll spare you the details. I couldn't talk. I couldn't drink water. I couldn't eat for 3 or 4 days. I had a procedure done. Peritonsillar abscess is technically what I had. And long story short, it was a painful week. But I missed the podcast. Like, it really is like a therapy session. So I'm excited to be back at it. Excited to be here. Hoping that you feel better soon. How are you feeling about this podcast and the growth and the change and, everything that's gone through?
Well, the world's not any less bizarre. That's for sure. And, you and I are both big believers in the fourth turning, which is a bit delayed. And I mentioned a couple episodes ago that the new book will be out. I just looked it up. The Fourth Turning is Here is the book that's coming out by Neil Howe, I think in May or June or something. And so, not that I wish the world to continue being bizarre and all the stuff that comes along with that, the wars and the inflation and the shortages and the whatever it is. I think we can probably do this podcast for another 4 years.
I think we're going to, at the very least, be able to do this podcast for another 4 years. Our politicians aren't getting any smarter on either side. They're also not quick to relinquish power, right? They're not going to go down easy. Debt levels around the world are still unsustainably high. We have a Fed that seems hell-bent on not pivoting, and kudos to his conviction. I think it's going to be a heck of a legacy he's going to leave behind, considering he's the gentleman and, that group is the group that caused the inflation that they're now so hell-bent on tackling. So, yeah, you're right. Look, these aren't things that play themselves out over weeks or months. These are things that take years and often, a decade plus to kind of sort themselves out. So fortunate to be in the position we're in. Thankful for everybody that listens. I loved the Q&A segment last week. I thought that was awesome. We need to do more of that. And thanks for the comments and the questions, everybody. Keep bringing them in. So,
a couple of things, and sorry for rambling. Yeah, you mentioned, politicians not given up power. I saw the other week Dianne Feinstein is not going to seek re-election. She's 89 years old, I looked up. 89 years old, serving in the Senate. I mean, it's just asinine. Like, you don't need to be in the Senate when you're 89 years old. Get the hell out of here. Go or read a book or play bridge or whatever the hell it is 89-year-olds do. And then, Yeah, Jerome was never going to pivot. I've been saying that since last August,
Yeah.
and now they're calling. Well, Elizabeth Warren was saying recently, she wants a new vice chair or something like that. That's going to be basically, more dovish or easy money policy, and that's not going to happen. The Jerome's tenure isn't up until the 2026, I think it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, it's going to be an interesting next couple of years, and while we should do more Q&A, next week we're actually going to have a guest. So we'll have the uranium insider on this podcast next week, and we'll just do an entire episode about uranium.
I can't wait. Look, everybody knows my two favorite commodities right now, despite what Kathy Wood says, are lithium and I know it's an element. I'm calling it a commodity. Lithium and uranium, right? I think those two commodities are primed for a beautiful 2023. I can tell you in the paid service and personally, we're positioned very, very well. Copper is a close third. You and I had a conversation off air. I will answer one question because I keep getting it from a lot of different people in regards to Peru and the situation as it relates to Hannon Metals. Hannon Metals has, again, a team on the ground. Exploration hasn't been, affected in any way. They have excellent community relations. Y'all have to remember that they control an entire basin. So at the end of the day, if there's ever a community issue, Hannon has the luxury of saying, if you don't want us here, we have an entire basin that's prospective that we can go explore, and we can explore where we are wanted. Fortunately, that hasn't been the case up until now. It's been very, very cordial. They've done a phenomenal job of getting that social license and really working with the local stakeholders. So a lot of you keep asking about Hannon. I am as bullish on Hannon as I have been in the past year or two, and maybe more so. And again, I don't think this is a company that becomes, a $5 company in the next 6 months, but I think in the next 12 to 18, we're in for some fireworks, and bet you're behind on positioning for that.
I'm a shareholder. I'll be there.
I like it. Look, let's get into it. We had some, I don't want to call it meaningless M&A, but gold is a little boring. And by the way, it looks strong right now. It closed at 1854 today. Nice bounce back off that low, right? It hit that 1812, 1813 low. Bounce back from that beautifully. I'll get your technical analysis in a second, Nick, because you're more the chartist than I am. But there was some M&A with Integra, right? Integra decided to merge with Millennial. And look, there was zero premium done. And I haven't broken the deal down. I didn't dig into it. So this is no knock on either company. But I think it speaks to the state of the gold space where the last two public M&A deals, the big one, right, that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and then now this one, have been done at little to no premium. And, in the case of the big one, like, shares actually went down on the suitor, right? The market didn't care for it. So I think we're at an interesting space where if you're patient, kind of like with Hannon, if you're patient, there's some gold names out there right now that are screaming bargains. But again, you have to really be a contrarian right now in these markets if you're going to bet on gold and to an extent on copper, right? For the next several months, I think you're going to have to be a little bit patient to see that resurgence. Exceptions are everywhere, right? There's always exceptions, but I think gold's boring again. Thoughts on that, Nick? I still think we're in a bull market, but I think it's a boring bull market right now.
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. It got softer than I thought it was going to get. Broke down through the 1875 level, went all the way down to wherever it went down to 1810s, 1820s. But is in a bull market. You've had wonkiness with the rates, right? You had that the 10-year get stronger again, the yield, the dollar get a little bit stronger. I don't think that lasts forever as we get closer to this recession, which it's going to come now. We're getting into the second quarter. We'll get Q1 GDP and that's going to allow the long-term end of the curve to fall off. It remains significantly inverted still. Last week it was the most inverted it's been since this whole yield curve inversion began last March or April, I guess it was. And so, boring bull market is good, but there's been more that just that acquisition that you mentioned there. And specifically in Idaho, there's a couple of other companies that have significantly larger and what I would say better resources than Integra, and then the Millennial that they merged with, which has assets in Nevada. One in particular has a 4 million ounce resource, and they'll have a PFS out later this year. And so, if you're talking about buyout candidates, that's That's a prime one, considering it's a past producer and has lots of infrastructure there on site, and is, already talking to the power company about upgrading the substation and things like that. But there's been other M&A as well. And that's what I wanted to mention. Excuse me. You had I-80, which is an interesting company on its own, take out Paycore Minerals. That was at a pretty significant premium. You had B2 Gold come in and take out Sabina recently, and that was at a premium as well. And so I think that points to just the reality, I guess, the reality that these larger companies need to replace their coffers, and there's not a lot of prime candidates out there that have de-risked large assets with infrastructure and check other boxes that these mid-tiers and majors are looking for. So, I think we're in a gold bull market. I've written a couple of checks in the past month or so into copper gold deals, and I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, paying off in the months and years ahead.
Same. I think, we've written a couple of similar checks here recently. And look, I will say this. While the gold space has been somewhat boring, the deal flow is being accelerated. It's more consistent. It's higher quality deal flow. And I think that's a great contrarian indicator of what's to come in the gold space. A couple of the checks that we wrote recently are very well structured deals with very significant land packages that are extremely prospective. You and I wrote a check for a company that's got consolidated a past producing district in northern Mexico where, there's it's elephant country basically. And it's the first time in the history of this land package that all of these claims have been consolidated under one banner. And so we'll be meeting with that company on Monday. I'll be at PDAC next week. If you're out there, you guys please say hello, stop by. I'm looking forward to catching up with a lot of you up there. But the deal flow is getting better. The quality of the deal flow is getting better. Things are starting to come to market. So there are signs of life, but the gold price is still boring right now. So be a contrarian or be a victim is what Rick Rule says. This is the time to really establish those positions in the gold space for the midterm, not for tomorrow, not for next month, but for the midterm. If you want to buy low and you want to sell high, you have to do both, guys. And guys and gals, this is the buy low part. Get it done.
There's a lot of value out there, and not just with the private deals. I mean, I look at stocks probably too much, and I see a lot of value out there. It's no one has unlimited coffers, obviously, but I see a lot of things I would like to buy. I'm sure we've talked about Almadex on this podcast before. They put out an update recently about all their projects and royalties and JVs and stuff, and how they've got $18 million in cash, and I mean they're trading just above a $20 million market cap, right? And no value for the drill rigs and the royalties and the projects, and so that's not the only one. There's others out there, but historically undervalued and oversold. Gold stocks are made.
Let's talk lithium. Let's talk. You want to pivot? Just get right into it.
Sure. I mean, we didn't really make a list this week. We were both super busy. So,
but again, we live this stuff, and we write checks, we eat our own cooking. So it's not like we have to make a list. Most of the times we put stuff on there anyway, last minute. A lot of you always reach out about my Patriot take. My Patriot take is this. We didn't get news this past week. I was a bit surprised by that, given the fact that the company was at BMO. I'll speculate, and this is just speculation. I haven't been in touch for, several days with the company, and I have nothing to indicate this, other than I've been around long enough to know that when you put 4 to 5 drill rigs on one specific part, and then specific right now means the high-grade Nova Zone to the east, and you keep those rigs there and you keep stepping out with 100-meter step-outs, and you don't move those rigs, and it's now been over a month with 4 or 5 of those rigs going at it there, and then you rush assays because of how it looks, and how it looks in the past, as you've seen 5 and 6% over, it's just widths that are absolutely phenomenal. I'll speculate that the news didn't come out because they probably had to send some assays back to make sure that the numbers were accurate, because the last thing you want to do is put out a phenomenal release with some astronomical high-grade numbers and then have to take it back over a rounding error, right? And so that's my speculation. PDAX next week. I think by the time y'all get this podcast, it's Thursday the 3rd here. You'll probably listen to this Monday or Tuesday of early next week. I think we have news. I think it's going to be spectacular. It's taken an extra couple of months to get past the 20 level Canadian. I think that happens next week. either way, still sitting on my shares. So yeah, that's the take. That's the Patriot take. I think it should be a fun month of March.
The lithium space is interesting. There's been a tiny bit of softening in prices, and at the same time, then Chinese production came offline for a little bit there. If you were paying attention to the headlines, but more than that, I think we're seeing, or about to see, or will continue to see a separation of the wheat from the chaff. It was getting a little frothy there, right? There was a lot of Me Too, closeology going on and still going on, people naming themselves after Patriot. I saw.
Can we call this episode, I'd like to congratulate Patriot Battery Metals, please? I guarantee you it'll be one of the most watched episodes ever. And if we do call it that, I'm sorry in advance, everybody, for pranking y'all. But I did give you a Patriot take, so it's going higher. It's free advice. I'm holding my shares. Do with that what you will.
I saw another company that changed its ticker to QMET. And then I've seen other pitch decks where the property is named Patriot. And then there's just been, shares that are running, whether it's Brunswick or, whatever it is, Midland Exploration that had a little bit of a run there. And you start to see these companies pull back now as people are realizing that not all these companies are going to go to the moon. And there's a lot of them, right? And so I didn't really have a point there other than to say that, these booms, they don't go on forever. And the Me Too companies, their life can only be so long because unless you're perpetually spending marketing dollars to suck in new investors, you're going to have to show your hand at some point, either by, doing the surveys, the early exploratory work that shows what you had, or heaven forbid, you drill something, right? And so the companies that are drilling, that are working towards drilling in 2023, I think you're going to start to see separate from some of these more story-related companies. And, I guess I'll throw a name out there. One company I've been watching out of the corner of my eye is Tierlock, right? The company TEA. That company
that was down some 25-30% today.
And by a similar amount in previous days. It ran not on the chart in front of me. I think it ran, all the way up over $2. Started falling off precipitously. And another reason money at 80 cents, right? Like a lot of it, which is additional dilution. And so
255 to 68 cents in a month.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so anyway, just a bit of word of warning, I guess, or caution that, just because you have a pegmatite or just because you're a lithium exploration company doesn't mean it's a great investment.
We were talking to a gentleman earlier this week, and I was talking about going to PDAC, and I hate being away from home. And, he asked if my wife was coming. I said, no, she's not making it this one. We got the boys here, and our middle child's coming in from school, from college, and spending some time. So, I'll be away for a couple of days. And I said, that's my smarter, prettier half, obviously. He said, yeah, all wives are great. And like all wives aren't great, mine happens to be great, right? But like all wives are not great is what I told this guy. All pegmatites aren't great. All lithium companies aren't great. And I love this part of the lithium cycle. This is the part of the lithium cycle where you're no longer going to be able to drink lithium water and make a promo about that and try to pitch shit to your subscribers. This is the part of the lithium cycle where you either know what you have and you're going to maximize those gains for your subscribers and your readers and yourselves if you're already in, right? Or you're going to lose people and yourself a lot of money. You better start knowing what you have and why you have it. A lottery ticket's okay. I'm not saying that some of these, neurology plays or closeology plays don't have the potential to become a real company with a real asset. But let's let that bear out a little bit and just understand that if you're allocating capital into those companies, you're betting on a lottery ticket. You're not betting on whether it's a 150 million ton resource or a 200 million ton initial maiden resource, like we are with Patriot Battery Metals, right? That's what the bet is at this point. We're betting if Patriot becomes the largest lithium spodumene deposit in the world, or if it comes close. That's an easy bet for me to make. It's easy for me to hold, 95, 96, 97, 98% of my shares and not blink despite being in since 16 cents with warrants, right? I don't lose any sleep over that. I'm pretty confident about what I have. I'm not confident enough in a lot of these other plays to take any of my Patriot money and go out bet on lottery tickets because I don't feel I have to. I feel we still have the goods. And look, a couple of our other lithium plays in the portfolio, companies that you and I have written checks for, have performed well. There's some real good plays out there to where you don't have to speculate on the trash, y'all. And at the very least, if you are, know that you're buying a lottery ticket and be honest with yourself about that. And if it doesn't work out and it blows up, be accountable for that, because at the end of the day, it's your money, your profits, and your losses, folks. That's my TED Talk. Good to be back. Bitcoin. Our resident crypto expert, Chris Curl. I know last week you started by saying you weren't going to rant and rave. All I do is rant and rave. So we're going to rant, we're going to rave, but you're going to get all the updates on everything, folks. I'm back and I haven't been able to talk for a week. So here we are. Bitcoin, Chris Curl, our local resident crypto expert, came out with a pretty bold, aggressive call for Bitcoin in 2023, early 2024. Do we want to give that away, or should we just play it close to the vest here?
I mean, no, we could talk about it. He runs Crypto Cycle, and I think he and I are aligned on our views on Bitcoin and where it's going. I mean, he thinks it's going to be six figures in 2024, and I don't necessarily disagree with him. I don't know if it's going to be 2024 or 2025, but I do think Bitcoin has a six-figure future, and at the same time, I think that it's got softness still ahead. I think this recent run to 23 and 24 was overdone. It stayed there longer than I thought it was going to stay there. And again, I think we're heading into a recession. I think you see softness ahead. And I think that the correlation that Bitcoin's had with the broader markets isn't going to break. And so if the broader markets are going to go down, I think Bitcoin's going to go back down with them. I've said that I think Bitcoin's going back to $14,000 or $15,000. I continue to believe that. If it does, I'll buy a whole coin. I mean, not that that's a ton of money, but I think that's where it's going back to. And I have really no interest in playing here in the low 20s because I think it's going to go back down. It might seem weird to have both those thoughts. Hopefully, you can wrap your head around that, to think that it's going to go down in the short term, but up in the long term. But that's where I am, and I think that's where Chris is as well. Yeah, I mean, there's only 21 million of them, right? You look at the money printing that's going on. You look at how it's being accepted by banks. I mean, I could go down the list. You've got MasterCard putting out, crypto-backed credit cards now. You've got central banks that are going to be using some of these things, not necessarily for central bank digital currencies, but for settlements, et cetera. And it's finite, right? It's what I've always said. You invest in Bitcoin for the same reason that you invest in gold. And I think Bitcoin will find its footing again, but not until after this recession that is going to come.
And I think it's here, frankly, right? We could disagree about the semantics, and we could disagree about, the numbers of the revised numbers and this and that. I think we're in a recession, whether we are, or it's a month away from the data proving that out, or 2 months away. I think if you look at the layoffs, if you look at, used car auto prices, which are still well above, prices 2 years ago, but significantly down from last year, right? You look at real estate prices across the country. I think it screams recession. And I think, again, despite that, there's places to make money. A good time to be a patient contrarian and be selective, folks, and be accountable, because it's going to get trickier for stock pickers here in the next little bit. You're going to have to really know what you're doing, and even some of those people are going to get their ass handed to them. People like Kathy Wood from ARK Investment Fund, who hasn't had the best year and a half, 2 years, 3 years,
to her, yeah.
2 or 3 years, and she had that handed to her during one of the better bull markets that we've had in quite some time. And I'll save it for subscribers because I wrote about it in this month's issue of Junior Resource Monthly, which will be out here in the next little bit. But yeah, I think she should stick to her knitting, and maybe Lithium isn't her knitting, and her knitting hasn't done well for her. There's a lot of other people that are getting away from their knitting and venturing into areas that they are nowhere near qualified to speak on. So just word of caution to everybody out there. Know who you're talking with.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying that. I mean, that's what my talk was about at VRIC, which the video finally came out on this week, and I shared with subscribers, is that, the next couple of months is going to be your opportunity to pick your spots on some of these resource companies in particular. And I'm in no hurry. I still I'm sitting on a lot of cash, and I think that there will be ample time to deploy that, but I'm not going to get sucked into these rallies, specifically on the broader market that's been going on since October, when I know damn well that there's going to be a liquidity crunch, and people are going to be selling their whatever, their retail holdings, their Teslas, their Bitcoins, whatever it is that, they've bought in the past couple of years as everything was in a bubble, because they're going to need that cash to make their mortgage payments. I mean, or their rent payments, which are now higher, or their car payments, which are now $1,000 a month on a $50,000 car, because, auto interest loans are 8% or whatever it is. And so, yeah, we've got to get through that, and it's going to present opportunity.
Speaking of opportunity, a couple of months ago, we were pounding the table on why you should be buying Cucho Copper in the mid-20s, and we told you it was a phenomenal asset. It was, de-risked. It's got a major funding partner in Wheaton Precious Metals. We explained to you there was a quiet period because the company was conserving cash. All of that was true, and here we are a couple of months later, and the company's damn near doubled, trading at 43, 44 cents, touched 47 cents earlier this week. I think it's headed to $1. Prime example of how quickly things can change in the space. I want to highlight one other company that has some phenomenal results that I think are consequential moving forward, and then this will be the last freebie that I give y'all. Aldebaran Resources. They had a hole that was fantastic that I think some of the market missed. I think they looked at the grade, and it was over 1,000 meters of something like 0.48% copper equivalent. Let me get you the exact number, but the main takeaway in that release
It's like
was 1,167 meters of 0.48 copper equivalent at the Aldebaran project in Argentina. The main part of that release wasn't so much the 1,100 plus meters of 0.48 copper equivalent. It was the fact that they drilled into the anomaly that their model said would have mineralization, and that they drilled to a point where they now believe that all of these deposits aren't separate, that they all unite, right? And if that is the case, those 18 billion pounds of copper, whatever the number is right now, and however, I think it's 3 million ounces of gold, that's about to grow really, really quick. And when we talk about scale, when we talk about jurisdiction, when we talk about long mine life, when we talk about potential economics, Aldebaran checks a lot of boxes right now, folks. And I know that you're a happy shareholder, Nick. I know your subscribers are. That's one everybody should be looking at right now at current levels.
I mean, we wrote a check at 30 cents, and on this news, the stock ran to 52-week highs at $1.04. And yeah, it's something crazy, like 13 billion pounds of copper already, I think 3.4 or 3.8 million ounces of gold, and for good measure, like 40 million ounces of silver or something like that, give or take. My memory's not as good as it used to be. But the point is, that's in two separate deposits, Altar East and Altar Central. And that's not even talking about, I think there's one called QRD or something, and then the radio deposit. That's separate. And so, I'm no geologist, and, when they start talking about, I was joking with you before we started recording, altered sericite clay and all this sort of stuff, I don't know what that means, but what I can do is look at that anomaly, that resistivity or that low or whatever it was, and see how where there's light pink, where they have drilled, that's where all the good mineralization is. And then there's a pit shell, and below that is another huge blob of the pink where they haven't drilled, and it's just as big as the pink part that's in the pit shell. And so I could say this pink is as big as this pink, and that means it's twice as big, right? I mean, that's my non-complicated take.
You're making it real hard for me not to be childish, Nick, but I'm going to stay away.
I was going to say something else there. They did a webinar about it. And I listened into that, and, they were saying essentially what you said, that Altar East and Altar Central connects. Kevin Heather was calling it Altar United. And, some of the questions, and those holes ended in mineralization, by the way. Yeah. That's what I was going to say. And somebody asked, well, if they ended in mineralization, why didn't you keep drilling? And John Black said, because that's so deep, it's like basically as deep as, things are mined these days. Like, yeah, that might be mined in like 50 or 75 or 100 years, but it's not going to move the NPV and the IRR needle in a meaningful way, because you wouldn't be mining that until so far out in the future, right? And then, anyway.
That is the difference between an economic geologist and a geologist that would have kept drilling and wasting shareholder money just for kicks, just to say they had a 2,000 meter hole, right? That is the difference. And so, just to piggyback on your point there, Nick, the company decided, let's continue to step out and see if we can prove to the market that all this is indeed connected.
It was only 500 meters step out.
Right. Only a 500 meter step out, right? That's quality exploration work. I believe that they have 4 rigs. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's 4 rigs now and maybe a 5th rig coming on. It's going to be the most aggressive exploration program ever undertaken. And I think that company is a prime takeout candidate between now and the end of 2024.
Well,
could happen tomorrow. Could happen in 2 years.
We talked about share structure. We spent a whole episode last week on it, and over 70% of those shares are owned by 3 companies, right? There's, oh gosh, I'm going to be able to think of them all. You might have to help me. There's Route 1, and there's Sabanye, and what's the third one? I
want to say Tech, if I'm not mistaken. Am I wrong about that?
Either way, there's 3, big companies that own 71% of the shares, and so, less than 30% of the shares available. And when you talk about, not that I have a ton of shares, but, there's some strong hands in that deal. And so, yeah.
No, look, phenomenal company,
I'll tell you.
Phenomenal asset, phenomenal shareholders. That's what to look at. That's your freebie for the week, everybody. Nick, we talk about noise on this podcast often, right? We talk about how we want to make sure that you and I, and I'm trying to do a better job because I get amused easy, but you and I try to filter out as much noise as possible.
South 32.
South 32, that's what it was. Yeah. But we talk about how it's so important nowadays to filter out the noise because there's just so much, right? We went from 3 weeks ago being invaded by Chinese balloons and then UFOs and, generals telling you to lock your doors, politicians that are on the National Security Oversight Intelligence Committee telling citizens to lock their doors, to not a peep over the past couple of weeks.
That's why I don't pay attention.
I mean, and we could extrapolate this issue to several other issues. One of 2 things is true. Either that was a real serious thing that just happened that's now being covered up, or it wasn't that serious and we made mountains out of molehills, right? I hope it's the mountain out of molehill analogy, but I fear it actually might be something kind of serious. I mean, it seemed pretty damn coordinated. It seemed pretty global in a scale. You don't see that every day. Then all of a sudden, everybody just shut up. Thoughts? I don't have any more thoughts. Just an observation, I guess.
I mean, there's so much noise out there. I was writing about it this week. I did a little Billy Joel, We Didn't Start the Fire, and I was, writing about all the things: interest rates, core inflation, DeSantis, derailed trains, genders, drag queens, whatever it is, right? There's so much stuff out there that, if you try to read it all and consume it all, you won't be able to do it. And 2, you'll drive yourself crazy, right? Because the next day in the 24-hour news cycle, it's going to be something else. You're like a squirrel, like going back and forth. I don't know what the balloons were, but they disappeared out of the news very quickly. We didn't even recover the one, or if we did, they didn't tell us what it was, right? And to have the pilot saying that it's an octagon, the one wasn't even a balloon, it's an octagon with no source of propulsion. I mean, that makes you scratch your head. And so anyway, all this noise and balloons aside, I mean, I'm of the belief that, there's going to be an altercation with China in the next 20 years. And so I don't know.
Oh God, you're optimistic for once.
I don't know what that's going to look like. I wouldn't like it to be on U.S. shores, but, I do think that there's going to be some fisticuffs, to put it lightly.
Yeah, I actually think it happens within the next 5 to 7 years. I think it lines up perfectly with this 4th turning that we're in the midst of. I think that, Russia-Ukraine is going to escalate. Again, I'm no geopolitical expert, right? But I can connect dots a little bit. And look, I look at Taiwan, I look at China, I look at Russia, I look at the Ukraine, I look at the U.S., and to me, the table's set. Things that were being, kind of tucked underneath the rug or swept under the rug are coming to light now a little bit more. And I think it's going to be go time here in the next couple of years. So I hope I'm completely wrong and we're all singing Kumbaya, holding hands, and it's free love and everybody's just happy. But I don't think that's going to be the case, unfortunately, folks.
Well, that's it. And, Rick Roll says often, careful what you wish for, $5,000, $10,000 gold or whatever it is, because a 6-figure Bitcoin or heaven forbid 7-figure Bitcoin, that comes with some other repercussions.
Agreed. Mr. Hodge, I know you're feeling a little bit under the weather. I've ranted, I've raved. You've given your usual thoughtful analysis on all things recession, overall markets, gold, technicals. We gave some freebies away. We gave our usual Patriot update, which I will continue to do until that's no longer my biggest single position in terms of cash and shares right now, actually. So that's all I got this week. I'm looking forward to PDAC. If anybody's out there, please come say hello. Anything else you want to get off your chest, Mr. Hodge?
No, safe travels. I hope you have productive meetings. I hope you get to meet subscribers. I've never been to PDAC. That's sort of my shtick now. I say that I'm never going to go, so I don't know what the scene is there, but I hope you don't freeze to death.
No, I think we'll be all right. Looking forward to getting with Patriot. Looking forward to getting with a bunch of other companies. It should be a fun few days. It'll be a lot of work, as it always is, but it's that time, right? Things are good. I'm supposed to remind people of stuff, right? I'm supposed to remind everyone to make sure that you check us out at dailyprofitcycle.com/subscribe to never miss out on our rantings, our ravings, our updates, and our market commentary. I am Gerardo Del Real, along with Mr. Nick Hodge. This was episode 208 of our therapy session that we call Investing in Bizarro World. Nick, send us off.
See ya, and keep an eye out for a new product called Profit Cycle Pro, which will be a low-priced way to get a little taste of all our publications and insight into, the letters that Gerardo writes, the letters that I write, and then the crypto letter that Chris Curl writes, sort of a digest, as it were. So enjoy the week.
Have a good one, y'all. Be kind to each other.
Hey there, you independent-minded investor. If you like this video, make sure to tell us so by clicking the like button below. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss another one. And share it with everyone you know on social media. You can also click the link in the description below to check out more information-packed videos just like this one. Thanks for watching.